Welcome back to the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Grillo, co-founder here at Resident 360. And I also have on the line Caroline Mills. She's our digital strategy manager here at Resident 360. Caroline, how's it going this afternoon?
Hey, Josh. Going well. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. We have another exciting topic today. We are talking about naming, all about naming a new community. Caroline, are you ready? I know you know a lot about naming a community.
I am ready. Let's jump into it.
All right. So the whole thing about naming brand new developments, even if you're repositioning a development as well, we're going to go through the nuts and bolts, the A to Z, if you would, so everybody has a really good idea on how that all should go about, the red flags, the things you should pay attention to, and what's really the proper process for getting it done. So to start, what's the first thing to understand when you're naming a property? Why does it really matter in the first place, Caroline? Why should we care?
Yeah. How do we start and what do we need to understand when doing it? I think we think off the top of our heads like, oh, naming a community could be really easy. But doing the market research and getting into it is really important. You want to know not only what your product is and what you're selling, but then the area that you're in, the type of demographic you're going for. You really want to have some great market research done before you just go in picking names, willy-nilly and just throwing them out there. It could be issues of what's already there. What are you trying to, sell? There's a difference between towns, townhomes, lofts, apartments. And so then kind of understanding, one, what are you selling? And then who and how are you trying to sell it?
So it's just not as easy as just sitting down and just kind of writing a list of names and saying, oh, you know what? This one sounds pretty good.
Right.
I'm going to move forward with this one for my property. It's not that easy.
Right.
All right. Well, from your experience, and I know you've worked on naming a lot of different properties through your experience, What are a few immediate red flags that come to mind when you see a property and start the naming process? Like if somebody's going to go do it their own, right? What are some of the red flags you see?
Yeah, you can definitely do it yourself and do your own market research without hiring like an outside vendor or company. But I would say if you're a new investor in a new market is really understanding, not going too niche in a certain market and not being, not knowing what's around you, but not going too broad. Example being, you have invested in new property in a college town. Don't just go to the immediate, university apartments, university towns, college apartments, like those very generic names. While it might seem like, oh, well, like SEO wise, I'm going to be university apartments and rank for everything. You have to be really strategic about it. One, there are likely some already in that town that are much older and have those kinds of names in them. But then two, it's not helping you stand out in any sense. And then you don't want to go too niche where people aren't going to understand it. It doesn't fit that type of demographic. It doesn't fit the area that you're in. So if you're not familiar with an area, I definitely recommend personally going to the area and actually being in it and seeing what it's like there. It could really draw up some new ideas. And then doing your own market research. Now, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but you have the tools more readily available with AI now than you did 10 years ago in naming apartments. Back then, you might be calling around, still searching on Google, trying to do your market research on the ground. Whereas now you can kind of leverage some AI to help you with these things. But I definitely recommend feeling it out yourself.
So there is a full strategy involved when it comes to naming versus just sitting down and saying, I'm a good person creatively. Let me just come up with some stuff out of thin air. All right.
Right.
So with that, let's build a little bit on that. So in what ways should a name reflect the personality, the target audience, the lifestyle of the property rather than just the, let's say, physical address?
Yeah, I really there's certain demographics or certain areas of the country that it really makes sense to have your own unique feel and to kind of, like you said, reflect a personality. We've got some properties where we're in downtown Chicago. And so there's different boroughs in that kind of area, just like, maybe areas in LA or in New York. There's different boroughs, and those different boroughs really have different kinds of identities to them. And so being familiar of what that feel is, what the identity is, what are the types of people living there, I think really makes people feel a lot more connected to a certain area, or being at the beach and including things like beachy terms and phrases in your names or in your branding. And so trying to have that reflect where it makes sense and not too much of a kitschy way. Like you said, not too trendy, but trying to do the lifestyle of it. So if you're in, Fulton Market in Chicago, you've got that in your name, or something reflects it really well in your name. If you're in Brooklyn, you're doing something that reflects that area of Brooklyn versus like a Soho kind of vibe. And so it does make a difference, and it does draw people who want to live in that kind of area to that kind of name.
Got it. All right. So what about being unique? Does it pay to be really, really unique? Or is that, should we be thinking about it in a different way? Short, sweet, simple type of name?
Yeah, I think there is a fine line with it because your branding team, may be involved in trying to be creative there as well. You do want to still put the strategy with it. Think of, if you're unique, one, can people spell it? If they drive by you, are they going to be able to spell it when they go online, or to type in a URL and actually do it? And then remember, you're going to have that name or that URL on everything. So if your name is, 5 words long with the longest words in history, now every, bag you've got, every collateral material you've got now has that really, really long name and URL. So I think being, unique in the sense of, hey, there's nobody in my market with this name is great to do, and doing your market research and seeing that. But then you don't want to be too out there to where people are going to have no idea what you're selling, especially if you're not including towns, lofts, apartments in your name. You don't want to make it so obscure that they think you're, a car shop repair place or like something like that. You don't want it to be too out there.
Oh, absolutely. And then also the other part of that is stepping back, right? Let's just say you came up with your initial list of names, right? And you've done your market research, you looked at what's around, and you come up with your initial list that you have. But also stepping back and saying, what's this name going to feel like in 10 years from now, right? Like, is this name going to make sense in 10 years from now for this property? So something to think about. All right, well, let's take it from the top, Caroline. We're getting started. We have a brand new community, and this community is in a, let's just say it's a downtown type of location, 300 units, and we're starting from scratch in terms of naming. So ideally, we're going to, I would imagine, start with some market research. And how do we go about doing that market research for that local area?
Yeah, I would say, really finding the area where you're at, going and figuring out the vibe. What are the places that people are going to shop at? Where are they going to hang out? What is the kind of lifestyle that person is going to live in this area? One, getting the kind of vibe and feel for it. And then two, deciding your demographic, who you want to appeal to. And then being in the area. What does it feel like? Where are you going when you're around there? And then what is everything else named in that area? We kind of talked about being unique, but not too unique. You don't want to be named something too similar as something around you. One, you don't want the exact same name as somebody down the street. But then not only not down the street, you just don't want the same name as somebody in general. You want to make sure that your name is not repeated, but that it can kind of go into the area you're going to. Remember that organically, whatever you're putting out there is what you're going to organically rank for. And I say that to say, if you are, let's say New Center, lofts and apartments in this downtown area, and the area itself is called New Center Town Shopping. Just remember that anytime somebody is using the phrase New Center in that area, you are also going to come up. Is that good or is that bad? If that's good and that's the kind of clientele you're looking for, then great. You've got free marketing. You are going to rank on all these different terms. If it's not what you're looking for and that area is maybe a little too far over, now you're not close enough to it to be considered that area, but that's the name of your property, then now you're going to be getting the wrong kinds of people, or bidding on your keywords is going to be a lot more expensive. So there's definitely some strategy in it when you're doing that market research, not only the area you're in, but what's going to happen when your property is online and what is it going to be like interacting with it?
Yeah, that brings up a good point. That's really when you want to try employing an agency, like ourselves, Resident 360 or whatever agencies out there to help you name your property. That market research is paramount, because what you want to do as well, to kind of build off what Caroline had mentioned, is you got to make a list of all the competitors in that market, all of the other apartment community names in that market, so you can see what they are. And you definitely want to make sure that you're not using a name for your community that is also one of the other apartment community names. It happens so often. Like, take a general name like Park Boulevard Apartments. You know how many Park Boulevard apartments there are in the country? Probably at least 10, 15, 20 if I had to guess. So you got to think locally, and then think regionally, and then think national,
Mhm.
right? And that's where it does kind of pay off to be a little bit unique. If you are using very general words, then you are going to be
Mhm.
stuck with everybody else that is also using those general words. So you got to think of some unique identifiers. That's where I think it does, when you have, if you're on a really popular street, that can play into your name. So, for example, I know we have a client out in their properties are in Atlantic City, and they're on the 600 block of North Beach, and the property we aimed called 600 Nobi, right? And it kind of made sense for the area. So, stepping back and looking at where your property is located at, and can you, bring in a location identifier into your name can be helpful and can also make it a little bit unique. But you got to just make sure you stay away from anything that's really general, because you're always going to compete. Even if it's not locally, you may be competing regionally or even more on a national level. And that can cause all kinds of problems for you when people start going online and they're searching for different properties, searching for your property name, and they're finding your property name in, say, a South Carolina region. So
Yeah, yeah, that's a great example, and that really did happen recently. We had a client come to us and they say, "Hey, we're getting a lot of calls for, Section 8 housing, and we don't offer that at our community." And so we're like, "Okay, we're, have those as negative keywords. We're not bidding on that. What's going on?" So kind of did our market research, found out there is a property with the same exact name who does accept Section 8 in a completely different state. So just like you said, going out a little bit regionally and making sure that that's not going to cross over. These residents in this other state were just looking up the property name. The other one happened to come up first, and that's who they were calling. So they were getting a lot of false leads for that too.
So you could initially start your naming process by, you do your market research, write down everything that's in the area, all the competitors and so forth, and then come up with your initial list of names. It could be, upwards 5 to probably no more than 10 names that you think are
Mhm.
unique or original that you come up with, and what you think those names may be. And then from there, what's the next step? You come up with your initial names. Should we take these names online, Caroline, and start doing some research on what these names are, and see if other people, if the domains are available? What do you think we should do next?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I would definitely leverage some AI to help you with this is, give it prompts and run it as if you were a prospect, as if you're looking into it, as if you're an investor. Kind of put these things in. One, see if they're out there. If they are, and it's just similar but not the exact same, see if you're okay with it. If it's somebody in California and the name goes a little bit off of it and it would not be confused with your property versus, you're in Florida, you're in South Florida, this property is in Northern Florida, probably going to get a lot more confusing. And then, like you said, that then leads into domain research. We have a really great podcast episode, a few back on domains specifically, but yeah, going into the domains, is it going to be confusing? If you see your domain's not available, but that's the name of your community, you might want to re-strategize, because now people see that's the name of your community. They type in that URL, and that URL belongs to somebody in Nevada, like somewhere else completely outside of you. So definitely getting the domain with your name is a part of it. Yes, there's a lot of domains out there. Some are taken. You might have to be a little creative. But, if your name is Park Apartments, I'm going to promise you Park Apartments is already taken, and that's already somebody's website.
So the holy grail would be to have a somewhat of a short community name, right?
Mhm.
With maybe something with a little bit of SEO value in it. And we've talked enough about SEO in this podcast, but maybe it's a 1 to 2 word name with maybe the word apartments. Then you have that domain available. There's literally no competition locally,
Mhm.
regionally, or even nationally, because you made it somewhat unique. And then you're able to get the domain, you're able to get all the social profiles, and everything just lines up and is super consistent. So that's what you want. If you can have that consistency where whatever that name is you choose, you're able to literally have it across everything: social profiles, YouTube channel names, your
Mhm.
domain name. That is the absolute holy grail that you want to look for. Now, it doesn't always work out that way. We know that, but that
Mhm.
would be ideal. So that brings me to my next question, Caroline. How important is it to have the word like apartments in the actual name?
It can help. If you listen to our episodes on SEO, we do talk about how helpful that can be in your Google business profile listing, in organic traffic, and things like that. People are searching for apartments and your name has apartments in it. So I know it can seem like off the bat, okay, that would be great for me to do. But again, do this market research, see what's in your area. Are there 17 other people around you, with a name similar that include apartments in it? I think it really helps a lot when you have something a little bit different in a saturated area, saying if it's all apartments around you and you are strictly townhomes and lofts, then putting one of those names in your name. You do want to think, organically and SEO wise, that you are going to come up with all of these people, and it can make it more expensive when you are bidding on certain keywords if that's in your name. So then it costs more just to be you. So I think using it where it makes sense can definitely help. We've talked a lot in SEO on how to incorporate it if it's not in your name and what you can do. But if it makes sense for your product and your area, then I think it could be really helpful.
Got it. Makes total sense. All right. Moving forward, now let's say you have your list of 5 names. You've researched them, you've done your market research, you've looked at competition, and they all sound fairly good to you. How important is it to focus group it, right? I would say that would be the next step, right? Actually doing a full focus group to see, make sure you haven't chosen something that's too awkward. What do you think about that?
Yes. I do like the idea of a focus group, especially if it's an area you're not familiar with. We did one in Greenville, North Carolina, which is near East Carolina University. And so when we were trying to decide on some names, we actually went and did a focus group out there and found out like 2 of the names on the list were already apartments previously. They weren't actively apartments, but the students at the school still knew who they were because it was an apartment, only 2 or 3 years ago. And they had rebranded and it wasn't there, but that didn't have a good reputation. So they were like, well, I would never live somewhere with that kind of name because that property before didn't have a great reputation. So very helpful because you may not find it online. It may be completely branded and hard to see and hard to find. And then your focus groups may tell you may be thinking about it from an SEO and a strategy perspective. And then someone else is going to tell you, no, like that sounds nothing like apartments, or that doesn't sound good in this area, or, that's offensive in this area to do that kind of thing here. So I think it's super important.
All right. So here's going to be a tough question for you. What's the single most common naming mistake that leads to lost leads, rebranding costs, or confusion?
Oh my gosh, having the same name as somebody. I have literally seen it happen where they get so fed up and tired of getting calls, emails, leads, for having some really generic name. And it might not be your fault. You might inherit the property that way before a rebrand. But that has been the most expensive way I see it, is they get it and somebody right down the street, or like say I've seen this one too. It's a property name where, 20 years ago, this investor bought 2 properties. One was named something north, one was named something south. Well, they decided to only sell the south one and not the north one. So now you've got half of a property with half of the name of somebody else. The reputation of one is not great. You're trying to improve the reputation of the other. They have to scratch the whole thing and rebrand it all for that reason. So definitely having the same name or being inherited with the same name of something else has definitely been the priciest mistake I've seen.
Oh, okay. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap this episode up. What is the last question for you? What's one piece of advice you give to any property owner right now that's embarking on naming a property as we speak? One thing you tell them not to do.
Not to do. Okay. I would say don't go with your first gut. I promise. Like, it'll seem like you have some really great ideas right off the bat. You got to sleep on them. You got to pass them around to people and see what they think, because you're going to come back and you're going to be like, that is so silly. Like, why would I even think of naming an apartment complex that name? So definitely take the time. I know it can be really exciting to get the naming down, so you get the branding and creative part going, but that is going to be the most expensive piece down the line if it's not done correctly.
Yeah, good point. One other thing I could throw at that as well is, let's just say you have your initial list of names that you like. One thing you can do is actually create those into really simple logos to see what they actually look like. It can be just a word. What is it? Kind of just like a text-based logo, but you can see, how long it is, how big it looks, right? To have a sense of what it would be like on a business card, what it would be on a monument sign, what would it be like on collateral, on a website. And sometimes you'll see some names that you have and you're like, oh my goodness, that is so long, right? It's so long that it doesn't make sense. Even if you stack, you stack the name or stack the words, it still doesn't make sense. So it's sometimes little exercises like that. You have your 5 names, you have your 10 names, and you say, oh, let's just put these in a really quick logos to kind of see what they may look like, to kind of give you a better sense. Sometimes that can help out in the long run and also help you eliminate ones that just don't make sense, because obviously we know the simpler names, the better. The shorter names, obviously, the better as well, because they're going to fit with everything you do, from your marketing, your branding, your identity, your signage. Everything will just work so much better. All right, Caroline, this was definitely beneficial for me, and thank you once again for contributing. I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. If you like what you hear, please share it with your team members, and come on back next week for another episode of the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. We will see you then. Caroline, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.